Hello everybody, and welcome back to this channel with the one and only Halloween video I will do this year. So the only thing I could think of was telling you some ghost stories. Not just any ghost stories, but actually ghost stories that have happened to me. And this story happened in the flat that I used to live in before this one, which I shared with Hannah, her brother, his boyfriend, and his dog. The first occurrence of that spirit, at least we think it's the same spirit, might not be, we don't know. The first occurrence of that was during the time that Hannah was leaving for England rather frequently because she had auditions to attend. So for those days, obviously her room would be empty as she wasn't there. And we also didn't see much sense in having her door open because... So we closed the door and had the lights turned off and all that. I don't know exactly what day it was, but I was leaving the house and I was thinking to myself while I was walking down the street towards the train station, oh, is the window in Hannah's room open? Because I don't know, just came to mind. So I looked up and looked at the window and the window was closed and the lights were turned off, so I do remember that specifically. And when I came home that day, late at night in the dark, I was walking towards the house and I looked at Hannah's window again, and for some reason the lights were turned on. And I was just thinking, oh, so there must have been mail or a package delivered for her, so her brother went into a room to put it there and turn on the light and forgot it, or I didn't really think about it. I just thought, okay, so the light's on. So I go upstairs and, come home and small talk. And then I asked him if he went into Hannah's room because he must have forgotten to turn off the lights. And he said that he didn't go into her room. And I was like, yeah, but the lights are turned on. And he's like, oh, so maybe she must have forgotten when she left for England. I was like, no, I do remember specifically, like I just told you, that this morning it was turned off. Went into the room, was like, turned on, obviously still, and that was kind of weird. So one could have argued, oh, so maybe someone forgot, that he forgot that he went into the room and turned on the lights, or that I remembered wrong, that the lights were actually turned on and I thought they were off, I don't know. I always try to find a explanation that is earthly, but it's still really strange. And that's only the first of a few occurrences. Similar things have happened in the living room. We were all about trying to save electricity. When we were not using, for example, the TV, we would have that switch that would cut the power for that specific plugs. So technically the TV and the stereo and the PlayStation and these kinds of things, they were not plugged in a sense. I do remember vacuum cleaning the living room one time and the TV quickly turning on and off. It was not like on a channel, it was just like some light flashed up and then it went back out, which does not really make sense because it was not plugged in. At least I think it wasn't. Maybe we forgot to use that switch, I don't know. Again, trying to find an explanation. One time, I don't remember where I was that night. Hannah and the gays were playing board games in the hallway where we had a dining table. They later reported that suddenly the shower water fully turned on. And that has happened that evening a few times, and ever since has been happening every now and then. Not as regularly as that night, where it happened apparently a few times. And it's not the kind of, oh, I forgot to actually turn it off fully, but out of nowhere we would suddenly hear water running from the bathroom on full blast. And that does not happen normally, I think, does it? Hannah and I were discussing that ghost one time, and she does not really believe in these kinds of things, but we decided to give that ghost a name. And I said, it's definitely a girl. I don't know why, but I feel like it was a female ghost. And then Hannah pointed out that the ghost started appearing around the time that we celebrated Hanukkah last year. We decided to give her a Jewish name, and the best thing we could come up with was Anne Frank. But that's not the climax of that story just yet. So in my room in that old flat, I had this wardrobe. I had this poster roll stored in it, and also shelves that I currently didn't use, but I didn't want to throw them out, so I put them on there. The poster roll was behind it. I did that on purpose so it would not roll off. So one night I was in bed, I was sleeping, and I suddenly awake because I hear the sound of that poster roll falling down the wardrobe. I get up, turn on the lights, and look at the poster roll and look up at the thing, and didn't think of how it was stored in that instance, obviously. When I climb a chair to put it back up there, I see that it technically could not have just rolled off because it was blocked by two shelves stocked up on each other. So it just couldn't have worked physically. So I do believe that must have been some kind of ghost. Yeah. Something else about that ghost, well, let's say that flat. The dog. He does bark when he hears a sound in the hallway and when he's scared when the doorbell rings or something like that, but he does not go around and bark at people or anything. He's really, really, really quiet. So it is strange when he suddenly starts barking at empty corners. That was even before Hannah moved in, that I was sitting at my desk and he was starting to bark at me, and I was so confused why he would do that. And I would get up and leave and try to calm him down, but he would get away from me and still bark at that spot where I was sitting. I don't remember what piece of clothing, if it was a jacket or a sweatshirt or something, but there was something hung up there to dry. We just played it down. We'd be like, oh, so he must have thought that that piece of clothing was actually a person or something, and he didn't know that person. That barking at empty corners happened a few times with that dog. Always in that one room, not always the same corner, which is really, really strange that he would bark at different corners for no reason. Sometimes we thought, oh, because, you know, there's a window, maybe he saw a squirrel or a bird or something, and he was like, oh, I'm gonna bark at that. But that's not really what he would do. He would run at it and try to catch it, but he would not bark at it. It's totally out of character for him. We've discussed various theories among us. If it was a ghost, what kind of ghost it was, where the ghost comes from. The facts that we know is that nobody could have died in that apartment, as my roommates moved in as kids with their parents into that flat, as the first people that ever rented that place after it had been constructed. Doesn't make sense to think, oh, so there's someone that died in there and still bound to the place or something. The usual story that you would think of. That didn't make sense. There's some historical thing because it was really, really close by where the Berlin Wall was before it was torn down. And you know, many people lost their lives around the wall, so maybe that's something to consider, that that's a ghost. Or a theory that my sister vocalized, that is actually a ghost that's attached to Hannah. So I don't know if anything happened after Hannah and I individually moved out, but if it's not, then obviously the ghost must have been either bound to me or Hannah. Another theory that Hannah and I came up with, was it Hannah? I'm not sure. Someone came up with a theory that maybe the ghost is attached to the dog, because also the dog has not been living there for too long and there haven't been any occurrences the first few years that I lived in that flat. So could be a possibility that the ghost was attached. So the theory was it's either the dog's mum, which is really sad to think of, or that it's the ghost of the dog's first owner, which is also really, really sad to think of. Well, maybe not really sad, but like really, really, I don't know, touching. Which makes me think of another situation in that flat. One time, and that's also really, really weird because the door was closed, the window was closed. Yes, you could argue that sometimes, you know, the windows are not fully windproof, but if they're not windproof, it would not have been so strong as it was. So what happened was, the dog was lying on my bed in my room and he was like really sleepy and cuddly, so I went to him and petted him a little and cuddled and scratched his chest and all that to spend some time, and suddenly we both felt this really, really cold breeze passing us. It was really, really crazy. A wind out of nowhere coming among us. It was not like the movement of wind, it was just the frostiness of wind that passed us. I hear that that's associated with ghost appearances. The dog just looks into the direction of where the wind went and kept his eyes focused on that corner. It was really bizarre. Also, it felt weird. It felt like the dog knew what he was looking at, knew the person he was looking at. So it's also a really sad thought to think that that could have been the ghost of the puppy's prior owner. At least I find it sad somehow. Poor little puppy. If you enjoyed hearing my ghost stories, give this video a like. And if you have any friends that might be interested or intrigued by these kinds of ghost stories, share the video with them and let them hear that story. Leave me a comment below what you think actually happened, if you believe in ghosts, and also if you want more ghost story videos, because I do have a few more ghost stories piled up in the back of my head. And maybe I can even get my sister to join me for a possible sequel to this video. She has a lot of ghost stories to tell. Believe me, she does. If you want to subscribe to me, you're very welcome to do so. Just click the subscribe button, you know how to do it, and you'll be done. So thank you for watching, and see you next week with a brand new video. Goodbye.